Welcome back. How was your homework? How was that experiment that you created for yourself? If you feel like you had any issues or would like any feedback on it, go ahead and drop it in the comments, send me a message, and I would love to take a look at it and give you some feedback on it. What we're going to do today is start to look at math. Hang on, this is going to be a lot of fun, I promise. The first sort of mathy math subject we're going to look at is something called measures of central tendency. Measures of central tendency, again, definition sort of being in the term itself. It's going to give us an idea like where our data likes to hang around. Like what is this sort of central point that all the rest of our data likes to orbit around? So first, we're going to look at what those three things are. Then we're going to practice some, and then I'm going to let you do a couple on your own. Here we go. The three measures of central tendency are mean, median, and mode. And I'm sure you've heard of these before. So let's work backwards here. What is the definition of mode? Mode is the most frequently occurring number. It's the number that shows up the most. And what about median? So median is the middle number, the number that falls like right smack in the middle of your data set. And how we find that is we find out how many pieces of data we have. We divide that in half, divide it by 2, and then either count down from the top or up from the bottom to get to that number, that middle number that we found. If your data set happens to be an even number, you're going to land somewhere in between two different numbers. Take the middle between those two numbers, add the top number and the bottom number together, divide that by 2, and then that's going to be your median. And how about the mean? The mean is the average of your data set. So a lot of people understand mean as the average. And in statistics, we don't call it the average because we have a few different averages. We have an average of variance, and in this case, we have the average of raw data. And the average of raw data is the mean. And it's calculated the same way that I'm sure you're familiar with. You add up all the things that you're looking at, and you divide it by how many of those things you have. So let's take a look at a data set and do it together. Here we have our data set. And the very first thing that I want you to do, always, 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 and this becomes so much more important as your data set increases and also as you're doing more complicated analyses. Reorder your data set from least to greatest. So I'll do that now. Oh, before I do that, I should mention that every time I rewrite one of the numbers, I'm going to cross it off on the list on the left just to keep track of myself. All right, there we go. I look over to the left, everything's crossed off. Now I know my data set is complete. So let's start with the first measure of central tendency, mode. What is the most frequently occurring number? Well, I could just look at it and count everything off. This data set is small enough and easy enough for me to sort of see it from here. But I can also rearrange this data set in another way. So a lot of teachers, they may teach you what a stem and leaf plot is. I personally have never found it useful. In fact, it always ends up confusing me a little bit more. But I am going to show you what a frequency plot looks like. And again, definition being in the term, it's going to be your data set, but it's also going to tell you how often each one of the numbers occurs. In one column, I'm going to put each individual number that actually appears in our data set. In another column, I'm going to put the symbol for frequency, and then I'm going to write how often each one of these individual numbers occur. 6, I see just once. 7, I see just once. 8, I see just once. 9, I see just once. 10, I see 1, 2, 3. So 3 of those. 11, I see 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 11s. 12, 1, 2, 3. I see 3 12s. And 1 13. Great. That's our frequency plot. So now the original question, what is our mode? Which number occurs most frequently in our data set? 11. Perfect. Excellent. So how about our median? How about our median? Well, our median is going to be our middle number, and we want to know how many pieces of data we have. Of course, I could go through my original data set and write down how many pieces of data I have represented in statistics as an n, but I could also go to the frequency plot, because the frequency is going to tell me how often each one of these numbers occur. So it accounts for every single piece of data, raw data in our data set. So in other words, the sum, and that's the symbol for sum, of the frequency is going to equal my n. Let's add up all of our frequency. 15. So our n equals 15. And finally, our mean. Our mean is adding up all the things that we're looking at and dividing it by how many of those things that we have. This is what it actually looks like written out as an equation, because x is always going to equal raw number. So the sum of all the raw numbers divided by our n. And the symbol for mean in statistics is x with a bar over top, just simply referred to as x bar. There are other moments where your mean is going to look, something like this, which is fine, but for our purposes, for this class, we're just going to be using x bar. So, do I already know any part of this equation already? Absolutely. I know what that n is. So I'm going to put 15, because that's our n, and then we need the sum of x. So I'm going to add those numbers right now. 153 over 15, just using a calculator, is going to give us 10.2. So our mean for this sample is 10.2. There it is, our three measures of central tendency, our mean, our median, and our mode. I'll see you in the next video where we're going to start to look at measures of variability.